Daisy Amdany is a member of the Kenyadharma Steering Committee, in addition to being the executive director of an organization with a long name. Let me start. Community advocacy and awareness, trust. Yes. Daisy, good morning.
Good morning, Eric.
Good to have you on the show.
Thank you. It's great to be here. Finally. In studio.
Yes.
This conversation has been there for long, eh?
Yeah, it has. It
Yeah.
has. It's been a while.
Yeah? Finally, you're here.
Finally.
How does it feel occupying the hot seat of the Situation Room? It feels comfortable?
It's really a nice, it's quite, the ambience is good.
Right. Yeah. We've been telling you this.
Telling you to
Thank
come
you
there.
very much for honoring our invitation.
Thank you for having me.
And we're going to be talking about what makes a political leadership in this country. How do we define it? And what is important about political leadership? What does it mean in the Kenyan context? Let's first of all start by understanding the Kenyadharma Initiative. What is it?
So the Kenyadharma Initiative is a multi-sectoral, non-partisan initiative that brings together different stakeholders. It's convened by private sector under the KEPSA Foundation, but brings together women, youth, people in business, religious leaders, and all other leaders to engage as Kenyans around peaceful elections and also about choosing the right leaders for our country and taking responsibility as individual Kenyans, taking individual responsibility to safeguard the peace of our country, but also the responsibility of making the right leadership choices
Okay.
and informing some of the manifestos, the proposals that are made by leaders to be able to inform them from our perspective, our respective perspectives.
So the first time that we're having the Kenyadharma Initiative, even in the last election, there was a similar push and similar conversation. What was the success of the 2017 initiative?
I think the fact that we were able to engage the politicians and Kenyans in such a way as to ensure that they don't engage in violent. I mean, we know that sadly, violence is a hallmark of Kenya's elections. And we only have one country. If our country falls apart, it falls apart for everybody. When things go wrong, they don't just go wrong for the politicians. So the initiative has been engaging, actually not just from 2017, but the initiative actually was birthed post 2007 because of how things went so badly. And the private sector was very central in bringing people together and beginning the opening up of the country and getting relief to parts of the country that desperately needed relief, but also engaging leaders to sit down and to discuss issues. So even in 2017, the initiative has been pushing for leaders to engage constructively, sit down, agree, use legal channels to, seek recourse, where you're dissatisfied.
Are you seeing a marrying of these lines? The truth be told, because I think when we look at the leadership, the political leadership, because I think there's a difference between the political leadership and then on the other side, as we've seen in the last, how many ever years. But are we seeing a marrying of the two? That on the political leadership side, there is an understanding that there must be constructive leadership and saying, let us then be part of this conversation to see how we can really make things different. Or is it really still selfish leadership?
I think it's both. And as we work towards the ideal, okay, we can't run away from the fact that we do have still selfishness among our leaders. But the whole idea here is to engage and bring us to the point where we understand that we cannot afford to be selfish, either as citizens or as leaders, that we must engage constructively. Because you see, even our leaders, nobody is landing here from the moon. As in, we are all Kenyans, and this is our country. There is no leader who would want to see Kenya fall apart. Ideally, there is no leader. Even if they engage, they may engage. They may not engage constructively all the time, but ideally, nobody wants Kenya to fall apart. So I think it's part of the two. And we've seen a huge willingness on the part of the leadership. You've seen the many different meetings that Kenyadharma has had with all presidential candidates, with the different institutions that are working around elections, the electoral management bodies, the IEBC, the ORPP, So it's really a conversation about our country, for our country.
When you talk about politics in this country, oftentimes you'll hear people saying Kenyan politics is dirty. I don't want to get into politics because politics is dirty. Yesterday we were interviewing Machakos County gubernatorial candidate Nzioka Waita. He said, I hate politics. I'd prefer it in a different route, but I recognize that for me to see what I'd like happening in our community, I've got to go through a political process, but I hate politics. I'm reminded of I think in the BBI conversations in the Supreme Court, or was it in the presidential petition of 2017, Dr. John Hamino, senior counsel, saying, you see, these people who are in politics, these are job seekers. They are not interested in leadership. There are job seekers who are just looking for an opportunity to get somewhere where they'll use that office to milk from the public coffers. So there's this perception of what politics is in this country. When you get into politics, people are like, what, Daisy? Umeamua. Okay. So what is political leadership? How do we define political leadership?
But I think true political leadership is service, okay? Service to the people, serving your country, going in there to use your giftings and talents and abilities to be able to administer the state for the benefit of the people. Bottom line. The truth, however, has been that most of the people, majority of those who do seek political leadership, do so for personal gain. Because practice has shown that over the years, one of the surest way to fame and fortune in Kenya is through the political gateway. And so you find that also is what makes the contestation of the politics so high and even violent, because the thought of losing is like you're missing out on the gravy train, which is why one of the things that Kenyadharma is also encouraging Kenyans is kukagua kabla kuchagua. Listen, look, talk to those people who are seeking your vote. Find out if indeed they seek to serve, that they are willing to be accountable leaders, because you have a responsibility to that. But also as Kenyans, it's also about my responsibility, because we also know that it's open season, the political campaigns are open season. Guys make money. You've seen Gado with his cartoons where he shows a guy, he sees the helicopter coming and he's removing the shirt of one party and putting on another to go. And that is actually essentially what it is, right? People, expect those seeking political office to come with treats of sorts. And by the way, Parliament also didn't do us any favors, because in the last, not this 12th Parliament, but the 11th Parliament, one of the things they did was to remove treating of voters off the electoral offence list. So, and treating of voters is simply bribery, okay? Yes. So that is also a call. We are also making a call to Kenyans. Don't sell your birthright. You have a responsibility. You cannot make wrong leadership choices and then spend 5 years lamenting because you have chosen the wrong leaders. We remember the time when one of our, I hope that people will remember, but I will not mention that leader. Kenyans get very offended when you mention their leaders in poor light. But there was one leader who was arrested for, unsavory behavior. And his followers went to the police and insisted that you have to let our guy go. And they were like, but this guy is a thief. And he was like, it's okay, he's our thief. Ni mwizi wetu. So you see, that kind of attitude, you know, we are also encouraging Kenyans to embrace our national values and principles of governance. Among them is good governance and accountability. Looking at leaders, do they meet the threshold of Chapter 6, you know, on leadership and integrity? Asking IBC and the EACC to work together towards ensuring that we don't get some of these people on the ballot.
The interrogation of these positions is something that I'm seeing that perhaps in this time is happening a little bit more than it was before. Before, it was, you know, in the throes of an election period, campaign period, that anybody could come. This thing that we're talking about, treating of voters and etc. Anybody could come and be like, yes, okay, who are you? What do you want? Yes, here's our vote. Do you find, do you find now, or rather the demand now from various sides is that there must be an interrogation of the intent for leadership of these folks who are coming to ask for your vote?
And it is growing.
And it is growing.
It
So I'm
is.
saying that there's a different position now that is being held by many a voter who is saying, hold on a minute, what is this person actually saying that they want to come and do?
And they ask them questions in relation to the challenges that they are facing, either at their ward level, at their constituency level, at county level. We're seeing that. Media is also doing a lot of that. I mean, I think media has contributed immensely towards the interrogation of our leaders. But for me, I'm also encouraged because the elite are engaging. I think that's been one of the biggest failures of our political processes, is where the elite sort of like remove themselves, that idea of politics being dirty. So you don't want to be dirtified by this politics. So you remove yourself from it.
But actually, in reality, the so-called elite, or sometimes loosely referred to as a middle class, don't actually remove themselves, if you ask me. They are the enablers. Because the systems that we keep talking about and lambasting and criticizing, they have to have a support system. And the support system is this group of people. So the hypocrisy that is presented by them creating a supposed distance. Now that's the moral ambiguity that we are famous for in this country.
I agree with you to a certain extent in terms of the enabling, because they are the people who do the tenders, they are the people who will fund campaigns. But let's look at their engagement, even from a point, at the point of engaging with the primary process, okay? Because very few of us understand the importance of the primary process, which is the nominations, how leaders make their way to the ballot. Many people engage with the process at the end, and they feel they've engaged with the process insofar as you walk into the voting booth and you tick. So many go in there and they're like, who is this? What kind of choices are these? They don't engage with primary processes. And we saw this also this election, where we observed the nomination process, and you will find that majority of the people engaging in the process are the masses. Now, perhaps at some point the elite facilitate like the selection of certain people, especially when it comes to consensus candidates, direct candidates, those kind of things, which is why it's also important to discuss with political leaders. And I think that's one of the failings that we have of our political process, because we were unable completely to get nomination rules for any party, either from the party or from the ORPP or from IBC. Which it begs the question then, why would it be so shrouded in mystery if the electoral process is supposed to be an open process, and the primary part of, the election is it's not an event, it's a process. If the primary part of the process is shrouded in mystery and opacity, then already you've clouded that whole process. So I do agree, partly. However,
yes,
by and large, they still don't engage the way they ought to. And one of the things that we're seeing now, which is making a difference, is this organizing of calling MCAs, bringing MCAs, candidates, and saying, we're giving you the platform to tell us.
Talk to us.
Yes. Same thing with MPs, same thing with gubernatorial candidates, which I think is good, because that's happening at the elite level. Yeah. So I think they are trying to change their ways, as it were.
But then there's this little disconnect in addition to the other disconnectednesses that we've been referring to. And that is how one connects good governance with a reward system that actually promotes this very same element. You see, when impunity rules, the opposite of what I'm saying is what takes force. There is a clear reward for those who will break the law, for those who will pilfer public resources. Once in a while, one or two people are called in by the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, the DCI, and so forth. But the numbers are few and far between. Every once in a while, the numbers are actually increasing now. So what is this thing that needs to be done to bridge this divide so that it is understood with clarity that the opposite of what we have been accustomed to believe is what is actually true and what works and what is lasting?
I think for me, it would be continued engagement with the process. We normally, as Kenyans, end our engagement with our leaders just at the ballot. Post-election, we do not engage. In fact, those who engage are termed a nuisance.
Yeah.
We are those who engage
It's evil.
most. And
Evil.
yes. So all those names. But it is important to follow through because we must hold our leaders accountable. We must engage in public participation. That is the only way that you're going to get the dividends of that good leadership. Because impunity thrives in that lack of accountability and engagement. It hides behind that. When you make demands on leaders, it becomes they are more cautious about the things that they do. Our courts have also shown us that they are on the side of the people because on many occasions where public interest litigation has been lodged against acts of corruption, the courts have ruled in favor of the people. Or even when legislators pass dubious laws that fall foul of the Constitution, the court strikes down sections of those laws. So it's about engaging further. So it's not enough to just engage pre-election and then assume that people have gone in. Because, I may talk a good talk. But once I get in there, I start
change.
doing dodgy
Comes
things, So how do I follow through on that? So it's really about continued engagement. So it's not just, as we are saying, kagua kabla kuchagua.
Yeah.
It is also wajibu wangu, my responsibility. In Kenya, we are quick to demand our rights. Haki yetu, haki yetu, haki yetu, haki yetu. We never see people demonstrating on wajibu wetu or even going and, jukumu langu, mimi. And it's about taking personal responsibility, right? For ensuring that your leaders perform. If Ndu, I've elected you, you've committed to certain things, then I should follow you on these things. Make sure that you're actually doing what needs to be done.
Some political scientists would tell you, Daisy, that this thing that you're saying is actually a science. That I put you in office essentially by virtue of my ballot. And that if I engage with you regularly, asking you questions, interrogating then certain actions that you have taken thereafter, or if I see that your presence then is not shown in things that you told us you would do, that if I'm doing this with you on a regular basis, then the reaction to my action over time becomes that, hold on, I need to actually get this thing done the way in which I said I was going to do. And then what we get is a resultant, a showing of my intention. But that the opposite is also true. That if I keep quiet and I just vote you in and then I leave you to your whims, the likelihood of you then just carrying on with what you want to do, then it becomes much higher. So then they're saying that there is a science to this thing, that you put them there, but then you keep them engaged. You keep interrogating their actions. And then you find that they don't want to be on the end of any kind of, drama. They want to know that anybody speaking to them then is applauding their actions.
Their actions.
Yeah.
And appreciating what they're doing. And that's it. everybody wants to be congratulated when they do a good thing. Nobody wants to be on the list of shame. And so it's time that we start engaging our leaders and also coming up with lists of shame. We need to start naming and shaming those who are doing the wrong things so that you can't hide behind it. I mean, okay, Muga, you talk about, the benefit that many leaders have seen in impunity. Like it actually pays dividends in Kenya.
It's not just leaders. The citizenry also see it.
Exactly.
Yes. So please go on.
Yes, in fact, I was looking at a thread, or rather something that's trending on Twitter about some young men who were murdered, right?
Yes.
And it seems that they were involved in some kind of dodgy business, online scamming, right? And one of the things that you get when you read some of these posts is that you see people are beginning to warn people that this idea, that Kenyans have adopted a system whereby they see that crime pays.
Yes.
And so young people are getting into criminal activities because they have seen that there is no penalty to it. So this is where the rule of law comes in. Because when there is no penalty for wrongdoing, it encourages wrongdoing. People do not see the benefit. We've got all these port of call is an elective office. And in many instances, it's so as to be able to use that office as a shield to run away from the judicial process or to muddy the judicial process. And they go on to greater heights. So people are like, so all this hard work, we've been told, work hard and you're going to get dividends. But the people who work hard are not rewarded. The people who engage in criminal activities are, which is, for me, my greatest disappointment is IBC not taking the list from the EACC and barring those, because EACC actually gave a list of people who should not appear on any ballot because they are under investigation for corruption. But IBC said, hey,
there's a
my
law.
hands are tied.
No, the hands are not tied. IBC seem to have decided that they can interpret the law.
And that's a problem.
Yes.
Because EACC are the custodians of ethics, the leadership and integrity, ethics and anti-corruption. So if they say, we are investigating these guys,
there's good reason.
Yes, it's the same as in 2013. Was it in 2013, the Commission on Administration of Justice?
Yes.
That time when Otiende Amolo was the chair. They actually released a list of persons who should not be considered for leadership because of the complaints that they had, and they had recommended these people for investigation and prosecution. Many of those people found themselves not only on ballots, but were elected and subsequently were charged with corruption in office. So it's also about us as Kenyans. We need to start putting pressure on our institutions, independent institutions. Yes, they're supposed to be independent, but we need to put pressure on them to do the right thing, like, the IBC.
Time for a break. 27 minutes to 9. This is Kenya's biggest conversation, The Situation Room, broadcasting on SpiceFM, on KTN Home. We are live on YouTube. We are also live on Facebook. Our guest this morning is Sheila Amdany. She's the Executive Director of the Community Advocacy and Awareness Trust, CRON.
You know that Sheila is my sister.
Did I say Sheila?
You did.
Oh.
You keep go ahead.
We know
But
you're saying
I know
Sheila.
that when people call me Sheila, they mean Daisy.
Yeah, and when we call Daisy Sheila, we mean Daisy. Okay. Daisy Amdany is the Executive Director of CRON Trust and also a member of the Kenyadharma Steering Committee. We are talking about political leadership and how we ought to be holding our leaders accountable now as we are selecting them and then after we elect them.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
Eric Latif, Ndu Oko, CT Muga, and Sheila's sister, Daisy Amdany.
It's been qualified.
Who is a member of the Kenyadharma Steering Committee. Kenyadharma is an initiative that is spearheaded by the KEPSA Foundation, brings together other stakeholders, including civil society organizations, etc., who come together to have this whole conversation about positive citizenship, right?
Yep.
Now, you use the word elitist a number of times. If you look at the people who are participating in or seeking elective office, especially look at the National Assembly, look at governor, look at the president, we'll describe them as elite.
Not all.
We'll describe
yes,
them
okay.
as the least.
Yes.
Let's just
okay.
say,
Fine.
you know,
Yes.
For purposes of discussion.
yes,
Sure.
they are elitist. The people who are spearheading this Kenyadharma conversation are, again, elitist. And if then you look at it from the engagement that Kenyadharma is having with the candidates, it's those ones of, let's come together, come to us, let's meet you, let's understand what your manifesto has, let's see what plans you have for the country. It's that top-level conversation. And like you've said, although Kenyadharma has been there since 2007 to now, we still have a gap of holding leaders accountable after the election, which is what I want to ask you. Is this Kenyadharma then not a very elitist thing, where it is the people who are owners of business, the private sector, who do business and benefit from business with government and around government, who are having this conversation, and then the rest of Kenyans who are not elitists, who are not members of this, who are not participating in this, are the ones that are just having their own different discussions?
Okay. So two things. One, private sector is what drives business. Let's never forget that. They're the ones who drive business. They're the ones who will perform. They're the ones who bring the performance into the economy, create jobs and opportunities. So they're a very, very critical sector. Kenyadharma brings together a cross-section of stakeholders, including, yes, private sector, but it also brings religious leaders from all faiths who have direct links with communities on the ground, bring together networks of women, youth, persons with disability, many who work with grassroots communities, and of course with the politicians, right? So the other thing is the elite have a role and a bigger responsibility than most. Just like when you are the one who your village has sent to school, the village has an expectation from you that what you have learned you will bring back to them and it will benefit them. Okay? So we must put that demand on our elite, because our elite have the capacity to engage with certain initiative, to engage with manifestos, because for the most part you will find that the masses don't engage in any critical thinking per se, right? So they're not taking time to read manifestos. Sure. They're going to rallies. It's that one, brr, whatever. Those are that is the level. That is how they are engaged. Whereas at the elite level, people take time to actually read those manifestos. They understand the challenges that they are going through. Businesses understand some of the policy challenges that are there, some of the bottlenecks that need to be unlocked, and so they are better able to inform the politicians who, their manifestos seal gaps, loopholes for potential leaders. Okay, all those aspirants. So they do have a responsibility to engage, and they must engage. So I think it is okay that we have elite engagement because they have a responsibility to guide. At the end of the day, once we have this information, just the same way we do as civil society, we engage with processes, and then we go and we sit with our grassroots communities and we bring that information to them in a manner that is easily understood by them.
By everybody.
So I think that it's top down, bottom up,
cross-cutting.
Yes, cross-cutting, yes.
I completely and wholeheartedly agree with you that yes, the elite have a role to play. The business, the private sector has a role to play. The leadership of various aspects of our community have a role to play. And coming together as Kenyadharma, perfect. Now, are you playing your role the best way you could as Kenyadharma? Are we playing our role the best way we could? If we talk about now, pointing fingers at IEBC and saying, we have an issue with what IEBC has done, for example, one would then expect, this village would expect, that this a very well-educated person who's called Kenyadharma, who's a member of our village, whom we took to university and has come back, would be at the forefront, taking IEBC to court and telling IEBC, you shouldn't have cleared these people. This Kenyadharma should have been at the forefront in saying, we have looked at the Azimio manifesto that was launched 2 weeks ago. We have issues here, 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 here. We agree here, 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 here. We want to engage and debate the Azimio on their manifesto, and so on and so forth.
Okay, so there are different modes of engagement, okay? And there are some who prefer not to engage in what may be considered adversarial, okay? They would rather an approach where, like in some of the consultations we have had with the IBC and other EMBs, where you actually point out to them, these are some of the issues that we want to have looked at for consideration. Kenyadharma has done that, okay? And makes concrete recommendations to them. Members of Kenyadharma, like ourselves,
Like Kron.
that belong also to other movements, such as Angaza movement, we have gone to court, okay, on several issues. In fact, a petition has just been lodged around the issue of the voters register, the dissatisfaction, because we have engaged with the IBC on several fronts. And, well, we just feel that their response is not adequate. And so we have gone to court. So I think there is room, first of all, for different kind of engagement, and we must allow for that, because one of the things that sometimes when your engagement is considered adversarial, you close doors, okay? And Kenyadharma is not looking to close doors. Kenyadharma is looking to have open doors and open conversations and engage in such a way as to persuade for the right things to be done, okay? And IBC also knows its responsibility, because as we push for credible, free, fair, and accountable elections, that is the basic minimum that is required even constitutionally, and point out those gaps. Perhaps later, as we interrogate the electoral process and see where things have gone wrong, maybe recommendations can be made. Nothing is perfect, but I do think that people should be allowed to engage in their different spaces and in their different ways. But that those of us who engage adversarially are welcome in Kenyadharma also says a lot, that they're not afraid of those of us who go gung-ho, against the systems.
There's, when you use the term elite, the common thread with elitism is that you have something that others don't have, whether it's knowledge, whether it's wealth. But if I peg the definition of elitism to just education, and I look at the number of people who go through the education system from 4 colleges, universities, over the years, the numbers have been increasing. And because of the absence of adequate employment or job opportunities, these people with that capacity still exist in our communities. So when we talk about the idea of people understanding things like manifestos, and then we throw in the media, whether it's in vernacular, whether it's in Kiswahili, and the preponderance of FM stations, I'm saying that just the knowledge base of what happens on a daily basis is at an all-time high in this day and age. So
This is true.
So people actually have a very clear idea of what these politicians mean with their manifestations. You may not read it. Somebody's going to read it and interpret it for you. Whether it is a baraza in the estate you live in, wherever it is, but people have an idea. What has always bothered me is, even when people know, have we been conditioned to the point where we prefer to elect entertainers and people who seem to we can relate to easily, or we simply just like, as opposed to electing people who actually will get something done and change? Because some of the people who have the wherewithal to do the spade work in bringing about change may not be very politically inclined. But if you are asking them to get the work done, they will get the work done. Now, we talk of elitism. The role that the elite can play is this role that we see expanding, in my view, where people understand that they have the power to hold potential leaders and leaders in position to account. They have the power.
Yeah.
And they have the power to determine this before they elect them. They have the power to have a social contract. They have the power to get them out of those positions. They have the power. Now, that to me, in my mind, would be the key role that the so-called elite, those who have the knowledge, who have the education to understand these things. What do you think?
I agree. And if you look at devolution has afforded those spaces. There are many, like I remember in 2017, there were entire counties that were voted out by the people in that county because they had done the wrong thing. I mean, they just felt these guys are not working for us. Literally, MCAs, governor out. So that sense of citizen responsibility and citizen power to hold leaders to account is growing, okay? And we hope that it will grow more. Yeah. However, I do think that as Kenyans, we do have a problem with our value system. I think our value system are warped and we don't have a shared value system, so that we are agreed that this is wrong. That we can say that if even my brother has stolen, then he should face.
Meaning he's a thief.
Yes.
Yes.
I should not look for ways and means to protect.
Or justify.
Or say ni mwizi wetu, or just follow somebody because when we follow tribalism, it makes nonsense of our education. Why go to school if you are going to just be like a barbarian? That you are motivated by tribe. Because you see, if it is about Mtuwetu, then the only thing that I need to be is your tribe. I don't have to be a good leader. I don't have to be honest. I don't have to be capable. And so those are some of the things that we are focusing on, even as Mkenya Daima. Leadership and integrity. Does this leader meet that threshold of integrity? Because we live with these people. We live with them. So we know. Your people know who you are, Muga.
They most certainly do.
Yes. And so we can't pretend that when we bring in thugs, we are shocked that they have stolen. But there is also an expectation. Now, I don't know, maybe you'll tell me if it is an African thing, but there is an expectation that the minute nikiangukia vitu, like if I get in there, it is automatically expected that there must be a trickle-down effect.
Yes, no.
And that trickle-down effect must come to my relatives first, immediate. And if you don't conform to that, you're considered, sort of like wayward. Now, that's a problem. So those are some of the things that we need to bring people into. Yet, it has been reinforced, even at the higher levels, where you see, like you've seen the NCIC reports over the years. The tribe that is ruling, like now the Jubilee administration, which was the first administration elected under this constitution, the president is Kikuyu, the deputy president is Kalenjin. Majority of the jobs went to those tribes. So that reinforces that mentality. We saw county governors rejecting even medical staff in their counties because who are these people? Why are they coming to work huku kwetu? Yet the constitution requires that at least 30% of the workforce be from other tribes, because there are counties where business can be transacted in lingo. I remember the Kiambu, the first Kiambu government of Kabogo, they were being sued by people of Kiambu because they appointed CECs, people, some of who were not from Kiambu. Not only that, they had more women than men. And so they were like, Kwani, there are no men. There are no men in Kiambu that you are bringing women. So that is the thing about our shared values.
So this is a man who was doing what needs to be done and was
by law.
And was being persecuted for
Persecuted and being told they are being sued because they have put too many women and they've brought strangers to come and administer the county. So you see, that is the thing. Kenyans celebrate. We celebrate when we see Kenyans being elected in other jurisdictions. We're like, wow, she has become a senator in Australia.
Yes.
That would never... Let Barack Obama try and come and run even for MCA seat here in Kenya. He's a foreigner, ni mzungu, anakuja kutuambia nini hapa. So we need to change
Even in
our
fairness.
value system to conform to the law.
Daisy, I hear you say that, but then the difficulty of that then comes in the same question that we're asking a lot of these would-be political leaders is in the how. How does this happen?
It has to start somewhere. So you see, like now here, Kenyadharma is focusing on those principles, the principles of leadership and governance, so that leadership is not on the basis of your tribe. It is on the basis of your capabilities, your integrity, and your ability to deliver services to Kenyans. And we are telling Kenyans that you have a responsibility to also make your leadership choices on the right basis. You can't complain when you put mtu wako na mtu wako ni mwizi and they steal the whole budget. You are to blame. So Kenyans need to understand that even we are almost co-conspirators in our own misfortunes because we make bad choices, and when they turn on us, not even turn on us, when those bad choices deliver their dividends, we complain. Why would you expect bad choices to deliver good dividends?
Daisy, you began well by talking about communities coming together to educate their own. Huh? It's a carryover from a time gone by when Africans were actually replacing white people in jobs. There were more jobs than there were people who could do them. So people found employment was easy. You went to college, you went to university. You had a letter of employment before you finished your exams. Now, that mindset has been carried on to date. So it is assumed when you're in an elevated position and you have some authority, that is what you need to pass on. The power of example, especially when you talk about the highest officers in the land, is something whose ramifications we will feel for a long time to come. Because it's part of our legacy. The security that then people feel is in the community they come from. And that's why there's this clamor for our own must be there. Because you feel, if our own is there, then at least. And yet evidence doesn't prove that you will benefit.
Of course you can't benefit because it's not about you, it's about them.
Yes.
So, and that's the thing. So we have to start somewhere because, so we're in a not so ideal situation where people still have the Mtuwetu syndrome, okay? But leadership is also about moving people in the right direction. And that right direction is to consistently and continually educate them on the benefits of good leadership and show them people must be made to remember how the bad leadership choices that you've made or the leadership choices that you've made on wrong premise have delivered for you these bad results that you now lament. So we've got to start somewhere. We can't say that because the situation is bad, it can't change. It can change. If we were able to change our constitution, despite the resistance, from those people who benefited from status quo, then we must then use that constitutional framework to move Kenya forward. And that's what we are saying as Kenyadharma. One, ni jukumu langu. I have a responsibility. And what are we calling on people to do? To affirm that nitatenda wajibu wangu. I will do my responsibility.
Okay.
I will do what is required of me. And that means that I will follow the law. I will look at the leadership choices that are on offer, and I will make the right leadership choices. Now, maybe not as many will, but as we continue with this conversation, and I know that there are plans to cascade it, now even to become a national conversation, to have a curriculum, civic education, because we must start teaching it from our children. Our children must be different from us, and we must inculcate these values to them. Even as we educate the older citizens, we must
start young, start
young.
early.
Yes, we must build the same values and the same ideas in our children.
Daisy, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for
1
having
hour
me.
is a short time, right?
It really is.
Especially
I'm
when
even
you're in the
kwani
studio.
unanifukuza?
Especially when you're in the studio. My call and encouragement to the Kenyadharma leadership: show leadership.